Hello and welcome to our webinar, and thanks for sharing your busy day with us today. My name's Karen Bowness. I'm the ANZ Marketing Manager here at JobAdder, and today I'll be the webinar moderator. And the topic for today's session is metrics and KPIs for high performance recruitment. And I'm really excited to have with us KPI expert and recruitment expert, Greg Savage, who's going to share his expertise. Hi, Greg.
Hello, morning.
Great. And we also have with us our very own JobAdder expert, Casey McDonough from JobAdder, our sales team. Hi, Casey.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm great, thanks. Okay. Oops, sorry, pressed the wrong button. Now we have a lot to cover today, folks, so I'm just going to jump straight in. This is what our agenda looks like. It is a slightly longer webinar than we normally do, which is because we have so much fabulous content. If you can't make it right through to the end, that's perfectly fine. Just exit out. Everyone that attends today will receive a copy of the recording. And I know there's quite a bit of content in here, so you'll be wanting to look back at that recording and review parts. We've got time at the end for live questions and answers. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as you think of them as we're going through the session. If I can answer them, I'll answer them straight away. Otherwise, I'll hold them over to the end for either of our speakers. So Greg's going to be speaking for about an hour on KPIs, and then Casey's just going to be showing you our KPI tool called Power Adder for about 10 minutes. Now, to have a bit of fun with you, we've got some giveaways that are made up of a coffee cup, and a copy of Greg's book, The Savage Truth. So in order to win a copy of that, all you'll need to do is answer a few questions or answer a question. I'll come back to that in a moment. But in order for you to get the most from today's session, I just want to make sure that you're able to ask us questions through the control panel. So you should have a control panel that looks a little bit like this. To ask a question, all you need to do is type it in here and press send. So to kick off our prize giveaway, if you can just say hello to me through that question box, that would be fantastic. If you're a prize winner, you'll receive a message that will say prize winner, and it will also have a link to a landing page. And we just need you to fill in your delivery details there so we can ship that out to you. Those should arrive within the next couple of weeks. So let's get started. So I'm sure our speaker, Greg Savage, needs no introduction. Everybody knows Greg and that he's an expert in all things recruitment. So I'm really excited to be able to pass over to him now and say, welcome, Greg. Just giving you access.
Thank you very much, Karen. I'm just going to hopefully grab the screen off you.
Yeah, we can see it.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for the introduction, Karen. Hi, Casey. First of all, want to thank you all. I believe we've got 1,300 people signed up for this webinar. That's a big number, of course. So welcome to you all, mostly from Australia and New Zealand, but also from further afield. Even good friends of JobAdder Access, which is the Staffing Association of Canada, will get to see this webinar. So that's exciting, and I welcome you all. Although I do believe that this session is like going to the gym, and what I mean by that is you don't really want to go and talk about metrics and KPIs, but you feel you have to. You feel it's something you need for your commercial health. And I'm hoping to give you that feedback, but also leave you a little bit more in love with KPIs and metrics than you were when you arrived, because I believe that they're integral. And actually, it's a lot more to do with the word KPI rather than the actual measurement that I think is negative. So let me explain to you what we're going to do. I'm going to use two terms today rather loosely, KPIs and metrics, and I'll probably mix them up a bit, but you should know that when I talk about KPIs, I'm talking about those measures that are essential for high performance recruiter success, the actual consultants. And that's where I typically use the word KPI. When I talk about metrics, and we are going to have a session on metrics at the end of this, which really are those key measures, your dashboard for running your recruitment business. And I'm currently on the board of 16 recruitment companies, and been on leadership teams of recruitment companies for so many years. And mostly people don't know what to measure, and they don't know what to act on when they have measured, or if they have measured. So those are the two terms we're going to use. There's questions at the end, as Karen mentioned, it's recorded. I should point out that the Savage Recruitment Academy, which you can get off my blog, has a lot more information on this, and the blog itself, which is free, of course, has a lot of this material in written form as well. So you have resources to go through. So let's leap in. Here's the first thing. 41 years I've been in recruitment. I know it's hard to believe. You're looking at me, you're going, that guy's far too young. Appreciate the sentiment. But 41 years I've been in this industry, and I don't believe that I've seen a more exciting time. I know there are challenges. I know we're short of candidates. I know there's a lot of things that we're still grappling with COVID and various other obstacles. But actually, the biggest obstacle to your success is, in fact, yourself. If you're the leader of a recruitment company or a manager or even a recruiter, it's your mindset, and it's the activities you engage in and the quality of those activities. The actual market is great. All this talk about the great resignation, which is exaggerated. There will be, though, high labor mobility. Shortage of candidates is a great thing because it means our clients need us. Economies are growing, borders are opening. There has never been a better time for the recruitment industry. In fact, I want to start by just reminding you, or telling you if you didn't know, that our industry globally is worth $500 billion US. 500 billion. It's growing now post-COVID at about 10% or more. The Australian recruitment industry is the 6th biggest in the world. What's number 1, you ask? USA. This is in terms of dollars spent by clients on recruiters. USA. Number 2, I know you're thinking UK, wrong. Japan. Number 3, UK, 4, Germany, 5, France, 6, Australia, $24 billion. In Australia, there is more money spent on recruiters than there is spent on the accounting and legal industries combined. Right? So accounting firms, legal firms, add up all their fees, add up all the recruiter fees, we win. And the only reason I mention this is not some sort of silly hubris, but just sometimes I wonder whether we actually appreciate what a significant industry you're in, how important it is for our country's economy, and how much opportunity there is. Fabulous opportunity. But a booming market does not mean you or your company will be successful. We're not all going to rise on the tide equally. As you well know, lots of jobs to fill doesn't guarantee revenue. There's plenty of new and fresh activities, and a lot of recruiters have been caught out by the fact the market has flipped so quickly, and they lack the skills, the resources, they haven't done the groundwork to succeed in this market. And the same applies to recruitment companies. I reckon in 3 years' time, some companies that you've almost not heard of now will be leading, and others that are market leaders now may have dropped off in importance. And that's because of how they managed and what their skill sets are. So you need to play smart, you need a plan, you need clear tactics. You know, a lot of recruiters have come back and been so grateful that the market, you know, it was only 12 months ago, we'd had no jobs, and 30% of all recruiters in Australia got fired in April, May, June of last year. That's a fact. 30% of all recruiters in Australia got fired, mostly under 1 year's experience. Remember those dark, doomy days, and it's gloomy, I should say, days, and it was true in all the other countries that are listening in as well. And so we're now so grateful that many owners of recruitments have come back and said, sun's shining on recruitment again. Let's do whatever we did before. And many of the things you did before, of course, are just as valid, but you need a plan. You need to be smart. You need tactics. You need to execute different ways of doing things, especially when we've now got some very obvious things that are different, like candidate shortages. Like, for example, that clients are actually willing to engage more. They want a better service post-COVID. They don't want to go back to those transactional speed, price, spamming type competitive tactics. And so don't go back to it. Go differently. Change your job fill ratios from 1 out of 5 to 1 out of 2. You make 3 times as money by doing the same amount of work. We'll come to that. So we hear all the time that recruitment is evolving, and it is. And COVID sped that up, and technology will be part of that. The impact of AI on technology right now is hugely over-exaggerated. There's very little AI in most recruitment right now. There is a lot of automation, and there will be more of that. The recruitment is evolving, candidate behavior is evolving, technology is evolving, work from home is evolving, clients' expectations are evolving, all sorts of things. But one thing hasn't changed. I can see your P&Ls of your companies, and I can tell you what's on it. 60% of your total costs is taken up in recruiter salaries, somewhere around that number, maybe more. The consultant still absorbs almost all our management time. You know that. It's what you have sleepless nights about. It's what you spend most of your day dealing with. Hiring great recruiters has never been harder than it is right now. You know that. Staff turnover in our industry is high, and don't believe for a second that the great resignation, which is only going to be a medium resignation, won't affect us. It will affect us. It is affecting us. So the recruiter is still our key differentiator in recruitment. In fact, more so, because the thing about automation, which people forget, is automation is going to take away from the recruiter that part of the job that machines do better, leaving the recruiter to do that part of the job that humans do better. And the part of the job that humans do better is relationship building, influencing, and creating outcomes. And so that's all around the skill of your recruiter. So everything hinges on recruiter productivity. And it's also true that consistently productive recruiters are rare. You've got some good recruiters, I'm absolutely sure, but we all would do with more. And the other thing that's true, and you may not realize this as much as you possibly should, that even if you do have highly skilled recruiters, many of them are spending time on the wrong activities, and they're skilled at things that are no longer valuable. So if you're skilled at things that machines can do better, that reduces in value. And if you're spending your time spending hours and hours, and this is a classic, and as I say it, the hair on the back of your neck you'll cringe because you know it's true. Hours and hours screening candidates off job boards, 60, 70 candidates to find one that's suitable for your roles. And then you find that that candidate was already on your job database, which happens every day in every recruitment company around the world. They're spending their time on the wrong activities. And these are people who are taking up 60, 70% of every dollar you spend. And these are people who are going to drive your success. Why would you have them spending their time on the wrong activities? And this is what we are doing and have done and need to change. So think about this. I just typed this in 5 minutes before the session because it just occurred to me that if we agree that recruitment is changing, and most people would say lots of it is, and certainly we agree we're in a different market. Most of us are in incredibly talent short markets, and 12 months ago we weren't. It's true that candidates have different expectations. Very few of us would deny that, and so do clients. And there's different priorities. Then surely if that's true, then what recruiters need to do must have changed if everything else has changed. How can we possibly throw the same set of tactics and activities when we, on the one hand, acknowledge that the market is so different? Why are we then approaching it with exactly the same tactics? And so if recruiters' activities need to change, and they need to be excellent at those activities, and no one's going to disagree with me on that, I don't think, how do you know it's happening? And how do you know if it's effective if you do not measure it? If you were in the room with me, I'd ask you to answer that. You're not, so just rhetorical. Have a thought. The other thing is, and I've managed recruitment business the same as you, it happens that for some reason a consultant or a consulting team, they're doing well, they're working hard, but you know they could be more productive. Just can't pin down how. I can't ask them to work harder. They're working harder. They're working extremely hard. They're very loyal. They're very busy. But why am I only averaging 20,000 a month from this team when that other team across town or in Melbourne or some other place is averaging 30,000? What's the missing secret sauce? And sometimes I'm sure it's happened to you. Maybe it's happened to you personally. Maybe it's happened to consultants in your teams. Maybe it's happened to whole offices. Doing well and then somehow go off track. Same people, market's not much different, and yet we're not hitting the same numbers. The answer to all of this is effective, positive activity management. Now, I want to be completely transparent with you. KPIs have a bad rap. Even Casey on this call was sort of expressing hidden sadness for me that I had to talk about such a boring topic that no one loved. And he's right. KPIs have a negative connotation, but that is because of the way they implement it and the way they set. I even see, and this makes me smile, sadly, recruitment companies advertising, we are a no KPI environment, as though that's something to be proud of. That's like a hospital saying, we don't measure whether our patients survive. That's like a cricketer saying, I know I keep on getting out to the same shot, but I don't notice that because I don't measure anything. It is ludicrous. KPIs are often associated with micromanaging. They're nothing to do with micromanaging. In fact, KPIs delivered properly give recruiters the tool and the tools, I should say, and the data to be more autonomous, more self-managing, and more productive. That's how KPIs should be used. And if you don't like the word KPI, change it. Metric, dashboard, don't care. Just because you don't like the word and the connotation it takes you back to a badly implemented KPI system, of which there were many, and there are plenty of companies who pump out the same KPIs now that they have done for 20 years. They implemented equally to everybody. It makes no sense. It's going back to my sporting analogy is you're going to give one player different advice and different things to focus on than another player because they've got different jobs. Why would you give the goalkeeper the same training tactics as the striker? They've got different jobs and they're at different stages of evolution. They've got different strengths and weaknesses. It's exactly the same with our recruitment teams. So it's not micromanaging. It makes me smile with sadness when people misunderstand the whole concept. You see, the secret to recruitment success, and this is it actually, it's the formula. This is your golden formula. Success in recruitment is made up of three things, and it's never changed, it never will. Those things might change, but the actual measures won't. The first thing is activity. If you don't do enough activity in recruitment, you will fail. That is gospel. If you don't do enough stuff of the right activities, which do change from time to time and situation to situation, you will fail. The second part of it, though, is and this is the part that KPIs very rarely concentrate on, and I'm saying you've got to be different. It's the quality of those activities. Okay, so going back to my endless sporting analogies, is if a footballer's job is to score goals and he takes one shot at goal per match, or she takes one shot at goal per match, that's low activity. And if all the gods of football are smiling on her, she might score one goal. Very unlikely. If she takes 10 shots at goals, her chances skyrocket. However, if each of those shots hit the corner flag, i.e. low quality, she's not going to score. So we need high activity, 10 shots, and we need them on target, high quality. Right? So it's a somewhat tortured metaphor, I'll give it to you, but you can understand how that relates to recruitment. With all the activities, the client meetings, the taking of job orders, the interviewing of candidates, the referrals made, the headhunt calls, the engagement, there's a range of them, and you don't want to measure them all, I'll come to that later. But they are the activities that lead to success. Striker doesn't shoot, she never scores. The recruiter doesn't do the activity, they don't score. But the quality of the activity is critical. So let's take Casey and I, right? We're working in a recruitment company. Let's imagine a world where we can do client visits. I do 10 client visits a week, high activity. Casey does 2 client visits a week, low activity. But my client visits are awful. I don't ask the right questions, I've got it all wrong, I don't prepare. His are brilliant. So he's got low activity, but high quality. He would probably be more successful. I would do more damage. So, okay, we fire Greg and we say, Casey, you're doing great meetings, but we want you to lift it to 5. So now he's doing high quality and he's doing quite acceptable activity. Fantastic. So now the striker's got 5 shots a goal, they're all on target. But the target market is the third leg of this secret formula. If he does great meetings and he does a good quantity of them, but he does them with the wrong companies that aren't hiring, or he sees the wrong person in that company, in other words, his target market is wrong, he still fails. Same with candidates. He could do 10 great meetings a week with candidates, do brilliant interviews, but if he's brought in the wrong candidates that don't have the skills that clients will hire, wrong target market, failure. So that is your secret formula, except you knew it, but you just never put it in those words. High activity of a high quality with the right people is what we need to do. It's easy to say, but it's hard to manage in a recruitment business. And that's why you need KPIs, metrics, measurement, and consultant buy-in to those things. I'm talking about creating a high-performance culture. And these are some of the components of a high-performance culture. I won't go through them all. I'll just remind you of a couple of things. Goal clarity is key in a high-performance culture. People need to know what activities lead to success, what it is that I'm required to do, how many of those, and at what standard. You cannot have a highly performing, consistent, long-term business in recruitment without goal clarity. Now, you might say, that's not true, Greg. I've got a great little business. 85% of recruitment companies in Australia and the world have less than 10 staff. That stat was from before COVID. It's probably now less than 5 staff. And that means that most people who run recruitment companies cannot scale them. And one of the reasons, and there are plenty, I'm not going to dig into all that today because that's not the topic, but one of the reasons is a lack of goal clarity, lack of expectations, a lack of accountability, which I'll come on to my next slide, and lack of measurement, because you cannot manage what you don't measure. And the missing link, I would say, in almost all recruitment companies, that's not true, in many recruitment companies, is lack of clarity around what I need to be spending my time on, then lack of measurement and lack of feedback on that. And you need to create a recruitment company. You see, the thing about KPIs is people implement them like they're some scientific statistic. KPIs are real living activity goals that recruiters need to love and own. And they need feedback. And you need to create a culture in your business where the feedback is cultural, not personal. I mean, champions thrive on feedback. I thrive on feedback as long as it's good, but I'm a deeply flawed individual. More normal people will thrive on feedback because they want to get better, and they can. You need an environment where feedback's not seen as critical, it's seen as helpful. And the thing about accountability is there needs to be consequences. Now that word is loaded, it makes people think of negative things. I don't mean that. But if somebody's got goals and they don't hit them, then the consequence is a conversation to work out why and how, and do they believe, and what got in the way, and what can we do better next time. Do you think that any sporting team doesn't have that kind of measurement and feedback? Or any doctor, or any professional, anybody who is performing at a high level measures the inputs and then adjusts the inputs for better outputs. And by the way, working from home and flexible working, it means more measurement, not less. And a lot of you are bristling at that because you're saying, you're going to micromanage me when I'm working at home. Not at all. Autonomy at work, which people want and which I believe they should have. You need to understand what autonomy means. It doesn't mean some freewheeling, non-accountability environment. It means doing what's critical for success in your own way and in your own time, earning the trust. But there's a little rider there, as long as it works. Right? So going to one of my famous sporting analogies, you can say to a player, look, this is what we're trying to achieve. You just go out there and do your thing, and we love what you do. You just play your own game. That's good as long as that individual does things that work. If that individual decides that their desire for that particular day is to fall asleep on the halfway line or to stop playing football and start playing rugby, they're out. And when I say as long as it works, what it means is financial outcomes and customer satisfaction. So in actual fact, working from home or working remotely, we owe it to people to give them nice structure, great clarity about what it is that's going to allow them to succeed, because they don't have all the people around them to check in, give them goals, and take them on the journey. It's actually very hard to work remotely in a self-starter role. Now, a very experienced recruiter, they tend to be okay at that because it's now in their DNA. But all the rest, which is the majority, will struggle without a dashboard to help them on the way. So here's the savage truth about KPIs, according to me. Call them what you like, but they are intrinsically good. In fact, they are absolutely essential. And no one succeeds in recruitment without doing enough activity, as I said. I also said you can't manage what you do not measure. So if you're not measuring things, if you know certain things are important for success, and you know there are certain things that are important, but you don't measure them, how can you manage them? Do you think it's helpful to say to a recruiter who's had a bad quarter, look, mate, I've had a long think about it, and my advice to you on due consideration is make more placements? How helpful do you think that is? It's like going to a batsman who hasn't made any runs and saying, look, we've thought about it, we've had a team meeting, we think you should make some more runs. It's not very helpful, right? So you need to help somebody understand that being busy is not productive, and that working on the right activities is what leads to success. But the secret sauce actually is that, which so many people miss, is that you need to work hard to get the recruiter buy-in to that activity. You don't impose them on people. You work with them so they can see why it is you're asking them to do these things. Goal setting is a science. It's not a whim. Hey, make more placements. Do 10 client visits. Make 50 calls before lunch. Why would I enjoy that kind of direction? What's the logic of that? It's just micromanaging, and it's not joint goal setting based on science that I can understand. When I say science, I mean we know that it works. So really, the underlying premise of goal setting for recruiters is to focus them on the outcome, not on the activities that are proven to lead to success. Don't focus them. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Let me say that again. Don't focus them on the outcome. Don't say make more placements. That's not helpful. I want you to build 150,000 this quarter. All right? Right. Good luck. See you in 3 months. What kind of leadership is that? You focus the recruiter on the activities that are proven to lead to success in a particular market at a particular time under certain circumstances. It's a dynamic, evolving. It's hard work for the leader. And that's, to be frank, that's why a lot of leaders get it wrong, because they just pump out the same old KPIs that their boss told them 15 years ago. Activity management is the key. And you don't pluck those KPIs out of the air. They're designed with science, and I've said that word a few times. I'll explain what I mean. And they're delivered with empathy. And that means understanding where the recruiter is up to and how they're going to actually execute on these goals. So, just simply somebody do more stuff, it's not helpful. They need to understand why and how it leads to success. And so I think you need to manage the individual's performance and their expectations in the context of the corporate goals and the team goals. And the phrase I use for that is a backwards plan. And this is where the science comes in. And I want you to bear with me on this, because it's so important that if you're going to sit down and you're my boss and you're going to tell me I need to do 5 of these and 10 of those, I need to know why. I need to know how that leads to my success. I need to know how that plays into my goals for myself. It's a joint venture between you and the recruiter to design a productive week that's going to lead to the outcome. And so here's a classic permanent team backwards plan. Let me take you through it. We set a goal for the team of $600,000 in fees in a quarter. The first thing you need to do, and this is the science, so to speak, and JobAdder and their dashboards and so on can help you with it. You know that your average placement fee is $12,000. How do you know that? Now, if you don't know that, how can I word this? You should. Because how can you start to set someone a KPI unless you know what their average placement fee is? How do you know the average placement fee? You take the total placements for the last 12 months, you divide it by the number of placements, gives you a dollar figure. That is a fact. It's not like something we just plucked out of the air. I think our fee is about 15,000. It's not, it's 12,000. Now you do 12 into 600, right? So that means our average fee is 12. We want to make 600. We know that we have to make 50 placements per quarter. Even that is a piece of information that most recruitment managers could not give me if I asked them now. If I asked you and you're in the room, 50% of you would not be able to answer, which is a problem because you can't manage what you don't measure. So you now know, instead of talking about $600,000, I mean, you go into the team and you say, right, the first day of the quarter, here's our goal. It's written on the board, $600,000, underline it. Picture of a champagne glass. We'll celebrate when we get that. Good luck. What is that? What does $600,000 look like on day one of a quarter? It looks like a mountain. But now it's not 600,000, it's 50 placements. And there's 13 weeks in a quarter, so I'm going to divide 13 into 50. And now my goal is, as a team, is 4 placements per week. Now that's something I can get around. That's something we can, 4 placements a week. There's 3 of us on this team. We can do that, for example. The other fact you need to know is how many interviews it takes in your team to make a placement. When I say interviews, I mean CCIs. When I mean CCIs, I mean client candidate interviews. You should know that. You should know that, hey, how do you know? Take all the interviews you had with clients last year, divide it by the number of placements, and that gives you a number. That number is how many interviews per placement. Drop it in, And if in my example, I've said 5. So that means 5 times 4, we want 4 placements a week. It takes 5 interviews to get a placement. It means our team has to make 20 interviews a week. That's 4 a day divided by 5. Insert the number of consultants. I'm saying there were 5 for that. There were 5, I should say. And that means 4 interviews per consultant per week to hit the goal. Now, if you work with your team, if you have this conversation, much more interactive, when you say to me as a consultant, what I need you to do is to make 4 of your candidates sitting opposite 4 of your clients. That's the activity goal. The quality is, it's got to be the right candidates with the right clients. That's also part of it, as we discussed. But I can own that. I can say, okay, my part of that is to do 4. Right? If I was the manager, I know my team's got to do 20. I'm not thinking about 600. My God, that's terrifying. But I can get my 5 recruiters to make 20 interviews. I think I can manage that. We've got a lot of good stuff here. That's a classic backwards plan. That allows you then to come up with a KPI that has science, but also you can communicate it with your team and they can buy into it. This is for an individual consultant, another way of looking at it. So you have a goal of 100,000, and that goal, by the way, has been set by a discussion with the consultant on last year's figures, on their earning goals, everything else. But let's say it's 100,000 a quarter. Wouldn't be an unusual number. The average placement value in this example is 12.5. Bang, 100,000 divided by 12.5. This recruiter, she has to make 8 placements a quarter. Now, even that piece of information is much more palatable to a recruiter than this $100,000 number. She's on naught. Actually, she's on minus 15 because she had a fallout on day 1. And you're saying 100,000. Now, we know that this recruiter converts 1 of 5 jobs she takes, which would be bad, but is actually the national average in Australia, into a placement. That you'll know because you'll have gone over her last year figures and listed all the jobs she'd taken by the number of placements. She fills 1 out of 5. Now that means this recruiter, if she's going to hit 100,000, scientifically has to take 40 job orders in the quarter, or she has to improve her fill ratio from 1 in 5 to 1 in 4 to 1 in 3. But if she doesn't, she has to take 40, and there's 13 weeks in a quarter. She has to take 3 jobs a week to hit her goal. Science. She's not going to be fluked any other way. But she knows, she might say, gee, I can't take 40 jobs. Then you say, no, that is a big, big burden. But let's work on the 5 jobs to 1 fill ratio. Let's help this person with exclusivity and managing the process. So out of the KPI and the backwards plan comes training and development, and the recruiter can see this and say, I don't fill 1 out of 5, I'm much better than that. That's what the recruiter will say 9 times out of 10. But then you show them the stuff and say, look, that's the way it is. How can we improve that? Let's turn away some shitty business. Let's focus on less job. Whatever it is that you as a leader will help them. You're going to get buy-in. They can see that the plan's designed for them, not some random plan that you learned from your boss 15 years ago and you're now implementing on a person who wasn't, out of school at that time. Backwards planning. Now here's the temp backwards plan. Contract and temp. Focus. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's a beautiful piece of stuff. Again, you take your target for the quarter. $250,000, I'm saying. This is in temp margin. I'm only interested in margin, net margin. That's what we measure on temp. Sales can take care of itself. Net margin is invoice to client, less temp wages, less superannuation or pensions, less payroll tax, less workers' compensation insurance. That leaves you a net margin. So I'm saying we've got a goal of $250,000 for this temp team in a quarter, let's say. Don't worry about my numbers, just the concept I'd love you to get your head around. And we've worked out that our net margin per hour is $10. Easily worked out. Total margin divided by total number of temp hours invoiced to clients gives you a number. I'm going to say it's $10. That piece of information tells us that we need to build 25,000 hours in this temp team in a quarter, 10 into 250. The other thing we need to know is what the average assignment length in our business is. That's very easy. Take the total amount of hours billed, your payroll will tell you that, and divide it by the number of assignments. And in my example, it's 150 hours per assignment. Now, once you've got that, you know that you need to fill 167 assignments, temp jobs, in a quarter to hit this goal. You've got 310 consultants in your team. Divide 3 into 167. They've got to fill 56 per consultant per quarter. Divide that by 13 weeks and it comes to 5. Divide that by 5 days in a week. And now we have a goal that's very, very palatable. In this team, each consultant needs to fill a job a day. And if we do that consistently, and I know some days we'll fill 2, and another day we'll fill none, and then we'll fill 4, and we'll go 2 days with nothing. But if we average a job filled a day, 5 a week per person, now that might seem a lot, but if it's a high volume, don't worry how much it seems. It will be appropriate if you do the backwards plan. That's the beauty of it. It will be appropriate for your market. This is common in plenty of recruitment companies that a recruiter's filling a job a day, business support, call center, other areas. Now a consultant can see that and say, I can see why you want me to do that. I understand. And of course, from that flows their bonus plans and all the other things that are also going to be important to them. And from that also flows, you need to fill a job a day. So how many jobs do we need to take? How many candidates do we need to interview? All those sort of goals flow from. But as an individual person doing my work, I can take ownership of that. I can see why I'm part of a plan. I can see how much better is it to say to someone, we need to fill a job a day, than to say to someone, you're part of a team that has to hit 250,000, please, by the end of the quarter. Away you go and do your best. That's not leadership. There's a lot of variables to consider as you devise these KPIs. The market you are in, and by that I mean if you're working executive level, if you're working high volume business support, if you're working labor hire, might be different, will be different. So you need to, that's why I don't, I used to see experts in recruitment putting out their KPIs that were meant to be standard for everyone in recruitment. Total codswallop. Can't possibly have the same KPIs for everybody because of these variables. The market you're in, whether you're working contingency versus exclusive versus retainer, the level at which you recruit. If you're recruiting 200 grand executive jobs, you're going to have different KPIs and metrics to look at compared if you're looking at 60 grand junior roles. The maturity of your business, by that I mean in some businesses, jobs pour in the door. In other businesses, each recruiter has to hunt jobs for themselves. The relationships you have with clients, and of course I'm referring to preferred supplier relationships, all those sorts of things, and the maturity and experience of each individual consultant. How would you possibly have a 6-month person on a desk sitting next to a 12-year person on another desk and give them the same KPIs? The 6-month person, you might understand why they're filling 1 out of 5. The 12 years person, you wouldn't understand, and you would work with them, I should say, to get that down to a much more acceptable ratio. And also the market, right? The KPIs that a recruiter would have had 12 months ago would be almost unrecognizable from the KPIs that you would have her working on today, because the market shifted so much. Now, please don't get hung up by my specific backwards plans. They're conceptual for you. I want you to devise your own using that kind of methodology. And the point is you apply science to devising what drives success. Don't just come in and say, you must do this. This is what works. You've got to give people an explanation as to why you want them to do that. You bring the recruiter on a journey, a joint journey, to understand the link between what you're asking them to do and their success. And their success is, yes, measured in dollars, but mostly for the recruiter, it's measured in self-esteem and income. And KPIs will take you on that journey. So that's how important it is. And you remember my golden metric, my golden formula. I'm talking a lot about quantity of activities, but at all times, quality is part of this. And KPIs can tell you quality. A recruiter is filling 1 out of 5 compared to one who's filling 4 out of 5. That's science, but it tells you something about the quality of the work. So don't go and replicate my exact KPIs, or exact backwards plan. Just take the methodology. So I said here, it depends on the market. So I just dropped this in at the last minute too, because it makes this point. So you might say, or I might say, we might all say, well, the issue, Greg, is talent shortages. It wasn't the problem 12 months ago. Ads don't work, etc., etc. So you might say the tactic for my consultants is they've got to target candidates and headhunt them. We might use different language, outreach, approach, whatever, but we're not getting candidates from our database. We've exhausted that. We're not getting candidates from advertising on job boards. We have to approach them. How do I set a metric for that? Most recruitment companies, sense to people stuff, emails on LinkedIn. Come on, approach them, get on with it. KPIs are set with science and love. Science and empathy. So the formula would be CI leading to OO, leading to QC, leading to QA, leading to RM. What gobbledygook? Let me break it down for you. The first measure would be, to a recruiter, your first KPI is candidate identification. Using LinkedIn, using a database, using networking, come up with a set number, whatever it might be, I'll make it up. 15 candidates that fit the criteria that our clients are wanting to hire. That might take a bit of work to identify them. Now, this is just identifying. It's a digital search activity, but that's step one. Step two is what I call outbound outreach. Now, that might be a phone call. It might be an email. It might be an email. It might even be a tweet, DM. I don't know, whatever tactic works. It's some kind of outreach, and you would measure that. So here's 15 candidates I've identified, and I've outreached 15. And that's resulted in the QC, which is the quality conversation that results from that outreach. So you could have one recruiter who quickly found 15 people, quickly sent 15 outbound calls, but never had one single quality conversation. Well, dead end. That's where the help needs to come. Are we identifying the right people? Are we using the right outbound tactic? Is an email smart? Should we make a call? I don't know. It depends on your market, as I said before. And then the next metric would be, out of those quality conversations, say I had 6 quality conversations where the candidate gave me the time of day. That conversation could have been phone, Zoom, or over a coffee. You should go for the coffee if you can. Out of those 6, 2 of them gave me qualified agreement that they would allow me to represent them in the marketplace, out of 15. Now, that may or may not be good. I don't know. You've got to measure that. And then out of those 2, I've referred them to 3 clients each. Now, that is a beautiful set of numbers and science that is helpful to a recruiter. How much more help would that be? Because you can, if you do that, the recruiter can identify where it's not working. If it's not, I'm identifying the wrong people. My outreach is wrong. I'm not having quality conversations. I have conversations, but I can't convert them into agreement to proceed. I get them to proceed, but I don't get the interviews, or I do, and then you work at improving it. That's a great example, now that I think about it, of a KPI that's appropriate for the marketplace, and a recruiter will find it helpful. Now, there's two major KPI disasters. One is that companies just go, this is too hard. I can't, this, and then they start saying things like, we don't have KPIs in our company, as if that's a plus. I wouldn't work there for $1 zillion. It's like a car with no driver. So just saying it's too hard and having no KPIs, some freewheeling hippie commune, that's not going to really work. Some people will thrive, like anything else in society. A few will thrive and the rest will fail. And the others are just metric slaves. They're like, these are our KPIs. Every week, hit this number every day. What have you done this morning? That's not the point of a KPI. That is micromanaging. That will cause resentment. People don't like that. They don't see it as helpful compared to the way I've described it. So I think KPIs the right way are this. It's the fundamental philosophical belief that quality activity drives success. If you don't believe that, please do, because that is the nirvana. It's the understanding that the KPIs are the recruiter's personal dashboard. They own it. They run it. They report on it. They believe in it. They help work out the backwards plan, and they set the goal. Everyone in the business has a deep understanding of that magic formula, which you should now stick up on your every computer and have everywhere. That is what drives success in recruitment: activity times quality, and with the right people. Don't give a recruiter too many metrics. KPIs, that's where I've mixed up my phraseology. 4 to 6 is quite enough. 4 is better. And the KPIs will change. One recruiter's got 50 jobs to fill, one's got 2. Different KPI. Could be different this week to next week. It's dynamic, it's evolving. And you can modernize the metrics. I'll give you an example of that. Now, I just gave you one before, but I'll give you a couple more. And manage the quality, not only the number. And by the way, if I was to cancel every meeting in recruitment that we ever have, and we have so many, the only one I wouldn't cancel is the consultant one-on-one. And the main topic of conversation in a consultant one-on-one is the dashboard. Now, I know a lot of you don't even have that meeting. How do I know? I ask owners of recruitment companies every day, and at least 50% do not have one-on-ones with their consultants every week. That's why you don't get consistent productivity. It's the one meeting I'd never cancel. The consultant one-on-one is weekly. It's at the same time. It is never canceled. Of course, it occasionally is, but you don't let it drop. The meeting is given respect by being always held. And then the consultant will respect the meeting. If you're one of those managers who say, I'll see you every Tuesday at 10 a.m. and then the first 3 Tuesdays you're out doing something else, how do I believe that you think that's important? How do I believe that you think I'm important? The one-on-one is not full of war stories and all the things that went wrong. They've been dealt with in the moment. It's a quick review of the week, and then it's a plan for the week ahead. And it's the recruiter saying, right, I need to do more of these. And I think I should do less of those. And what about, and I can't get what, and between the two of you come up with agreed activity targets. And the recruiter leaves with a spring in her step because she's had input, she's been taught why activity leads to success, and she owns it and it's hers, and away she goes to do it. And if she's struggling in some area, like the conversion rate between the conversation of the outreach to the meeting is not good, then you give her training and help, and you bring in other resources. And so the consultant feels that the one-on-one is her time to shine, to accept responsibility for what happened the week before, and there's consequences if she didn't hit her goals. The consequences are not being fired or beaten with a stick. Consequences are a conversation and justification and new goals being set, and specific help is given. This is what you should be doing. And if you're an owner or a manager who thinks you're too busy to do this, you are focusing on the wrong things. This is what drives productivity. The consultant is the only leverage point that you have over productivity, and the consultant is taking up 70 cents out of every dollar you spend, 60 to 70 cents. If it gets over 70, you'll go bust. Very quickly, let's say you wanted to set someone a goal of improving their brand on LinkedIn. Just as you can have KPIs for that. I'll just go through this quickly because I need to get on to the next thing. Catchment simply means if you're going to build your brand, you need to have an audience, right? So they need to build their LinkedIn connections, for example. Let's talk about that. That's very easy. You've got 400. By the end of June, let's have 600. How are you going to do that? Target people in your sector, connect with. So there's a KPI. The second one is conversation. If you, by that I mean online conversation. So you can measure. Now, for example, LinkedIn has a social selling index. You didn't know that? Search it out, and you just have to plug in if your LinkedIn is, if you're logged into LinkedIn and you log into that in a separate window into that URL, it'll tell you your social selling index, and that's the conversation that you're having, an interaction. People are communicating with you, and likewise, usually through the content that you put out. So you'll set them content and conversation goals, and the final one is conversion. That's where the magic happens. That's where a candidate that you didn't know 3 months ago engages through catchment and conversation, and eventually you bring them in, and they're a candidate that you're actively recruiting for, or equally trying to place something, and a client that you're recruiting for. I've got a blog on this, going into much more detail, The Savage Truth, gregsavage.com.au. It's all spelled out in detail. I'm not advocating rush out and implement that, but if you do have as one of your goals, people building brand, just saying build brand on LinkedIn, be active on LinkedIn is extremely unhelpful. You need measurement. You can't manage what you don't measure. Okay. This is a tougher workout than my gym session, actually. These are the 14 sacred staffing metrics, recruitment metrics for running your recruitment business. Again, I've got extensive blogs on this on the Savage Truth, and extensive explanation on this on the Savage Recruitment Academy, which is a subscriber. You do pay for it. It's genius, but you do pay for it. The blog, of course, is free, so you can choose how you want to go about it. These are the measures I would look at. I'm just going to highlight a few powerful ones because I have just 10 minutes. Maybe I've got 12 minutes. It's a dashboard, guys. The metaphor that I think of is if I'm a pilot flying a plane, I can't do that, but a pilot flying a plane doesn't wait to hit a mountain before she realizes I've hit the mountain, that was a mistake. They have a dashboard that predicts the future. It tells her the altitude. It tells her the distance. It tells her the weather. It tells her the pressure. It's a dashboard. And she knows which of those measures on her dashboard are critical for reaching the destination. You need that dashboard. And this is it. I made it for you. So the first one is gross profit per staff member. It's a nice, broad figure. I'd look at it monthly. It's a pretty telling thing because your gross profit per consultant could be going up, but as you add peripheral staff and support staff, your actual productivity per person in the business could go down. So I like to see it trending. I like to see it monthly. So I can, like the dashboard example, I can see whether I'm going in the right direction. They are both excellent measures. You want both probably because your gross profit per income producer is your raw productivity. So an income producer, I'd have recruiters, resources, salespeople, whatever. If they're involved in producing income, you add them in. You just take your total gross profit. We did $1 million in this month, or let's make it more realistic. We did 100,000 in this month. We've got 4 people. We did 25,000 gross profit per person. Now, how did that compare to last month, next month? Trending on a graph. And you want it to go up. As soon as you add a new person, it will go down because that person is not productive for a while, but you want to see it climb back quickly. And that's how you can tell it's working. The gross profit multiple is simply your total salaries divided by your total gross profit. And that will tell you your cover. And you're looking, if you can, to get over 3 times, if at all possible. I'm going to skip down to the management and staff costs. This is really important. You take all your salaries for all your human beings, everybody, staff, management, support, and you divide it into your gross profit, or perhaps it's the other way around. And if it gets over 60, then you're getting nervous. You want that as low as possible because that's a productivity measure again. If you're running a blended business, that's temp and perm, and I don't want to get too much into my hobby horse on this, but if you want a highly productive business that is both resilient against downturn and highly profitable in the upturn, and which somebody might pay you a lot of money for, you want high perm and high temp. You want 50, 60% of your gross profit, maybe even more, coming from temp. You don't increase that percentage, ladies and gentlemen, by reducing your perm. Perm is beautiful. Perm is profitable. We love it, but it's an unfaithful thing, perm. It'll drop away, as you found out 12 months ago, and we'll do it again sometime in the future, whereas your contract and annuity revenue is far more resilient. So you'll be looking at that. And here we say that I think we've got some best practice, 90%, probably not feasible. For most of you in most areas, if you're doing both, you'll want 60%, maybe a bit more from temp and contract at least. EBIT as a percentage of gross profit is a good measure. I actually prefer EBIT, and I'm not sure why I didn't change this, as a percentage of sales, if it's a blended business. But if it's if you just look at your gross profit and compare it to your gross profit is net fee income, right? It's permanent placement fees and net temporary margin. If you're not sure of those terms, that's your gross profit, and your EBIT is your operating profit before tax. And you want your operating profit to be over 30% of your total gross profit. If you're looking at EBIT as a percentage of sales, 10% is best practice. If you do have 50% contract and 50% perm, if you can get 10% of every, what that means is, when I say to you, sometimes these terms, if they're not familiar to you, can be confusing. Operating profit as a percentage of sales means for every dollar we invoice a client, 10 cents ends up as profit. That is a 10% EBIT or operating profit margin. That is extremely good, and most of you will not be getting that. If you're all perm, you will be getting that. Debtor days, you should be watching that. Less than 30. 30 days to roll your debtors. If your debtors start to blow out, horrible things happen. You get more bad debts. You suddenly find you can't afford to pay your temps. You have to get an overdraft. You have to mortgage your house. Don't do it. Collect your debts. It's a very, very important metric to run a recruitment business. Expenditure per staff member. I love this. There's a mistake there. You see that big red arrow? That's me pointing out that it's not month, it's quarter. But that's a screenshot, so I couldn't, edit it. It's quarterly, if you want to look at those numbers there. But total expenditure per staff member, you can measure it monthly or quarterly. I'm just pointing out that this example is actually quarterly. And you watch that like a hawk, because as you grow, you don't want your expenditure per staff member to go up, because every staff member should be giving productivity. So you watch that closely. And the other one that I love and would have, and do have like on a wall in front of me always is temp margin trending. That's your percentage margin. Now your temp margin is the margin as a percentage of sales. I'll make it very simple for you. I invoiced the client $50. I took off the salaries of the temp, those other things I mentioned before, and it leaves me with $15. 15 into 50 as a percentage is my margin. That number across 100 temps, if it drops a percentage, it's tens of thousands of dollars. That number you should be watching like a hawk. Yeah, you might give a client a discount here for a certain reason, but overall, particularly in a market like this, right? Because what's happening to your consultants, and you know this better than I do, they're getting pressure from their temps for a higher hourly rates, and they're giving them because they want to fill the job, but they're not necessarily skilled or confident enough to pass on the increase to the client, and they need to, because if it squeezes your margin, you're going to be losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in a year. So I will be watching my temp, there it is, there, temp margin trending. Don't be too hung up on this, depends what country you're in. In 2020, the average in Australia was 16%, but I like 20 more. And remember, the job market's like the fruit market in the sense that if there's a shortage of bananas, the price of bananas goes up. Now, I realize I just made the faux pas of comparing candidates with bananas, and I didn't mean to do that. But what you are doing is saying if there's a shortage and I can supply it, then, and it's costing me more because my consultant salaries are going up, my temp rates are going up, you pass it on. I'm not talking about gouging. I'm not talking about taking advantage of anyone, but prices go up if it's harder to provide a commodity. So, but how do you know if you don't measure it? How do you know if you don't measure it and look at it? And then the final one that I love is not that one, is profit per staff member, because that cuts through everything. Because remember this, I've sat around a million board meetings where people say, look, our profit this last year was $1 million and our profit this year is 1.3. We're going up. And I'm like, yeah, but we've gone from 10 staff to 25. We're less profitable per staff member. So why did we add those people just to go backwards? More staff means more risk, more cost, more everything. I'm not saying don't hire more staff. Do hire more staff if you want to grow, but measure your profit per staff member monthly, per staff member. You add an extra part-time marketing person, bang, they go, salary goes in, their cost goes in, and their calculation as a FTE goes in. I made $1 million, I've got 100 staff, 100 into $1 million is 10, I make $10,000 per person per month. And next month it's 9,000, hey? But we made more money, yeah, but we had more people. Very important. So these are the metrics that I encourage you to use. And look, I've given you the averages, I've given you the danger. You really have no excuse not to use them, or at least take the best 5 for you. It's 1 minute to the end of my time, and you will get the obligatory ad. The Savage Recruitment Academy has got about 30 hours of training, including all the stuff I've spoken about today in even more depth. You access it by going to my website, which is gregsavage.com.au. Top right, there's a little button that says Savage Recruitment Academy. It's a subscription. You subscribe quarterly, you can get out of it anytime. It's a very low cost, frankly. And it is recruiter training and management training and director information. Like for example, that session I've just done for you on metrics, that's all in there in a lot more detail. The other thing is you really should buy my book and give it to yourself as a birthday present. If you're in Australia and you go to my website, my publisher is selling it at less than half price. I have mixed feelings about that, to be honest with you, but she is, and she's gift wrapping it. So give a recruiter you love the savage truth. Karen, I think I'm done. I've taken my 60 minutes and I'm going to hand it over to you, if I may.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks so much for that. I think everyone can agree that I'm just going to check. Can you see my screen? That triggering question? You can?
Yes, Casey, I can see. Can I just quickly pop in and ask everyone a question while you get set up? Because I've got some more packages to give away. Sorry, I lost my screen there for a minute. That's the delay. Now, I want to ask our audience, we've got 10 more prize packs to give away. If they can share with us their number one takeaway from Greg's presentation, we'll give away those next 10 packs. Okay, over to you, Casey. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. And thanks, Karen and Tina, for always doing such an amazing job with these webinars. And thanks so much for that, Greg. I think everything you said will resonate massively with so many people. I mean, you brought me back to my one-to-ones when I used to be in agency recruitment and the importance of having them. And it's important to go back onto what you said just before I go into the job adder side. The importance of knowing that every desk is different. We can't compare an IT sales perm desk to a desk that is on field glass all day on the 0007 panel getting jobs in all the time. Those KPIs have to be different. And on top of that, what used to always annoy me was that we forget often that every personality on these desks in your agencies are also very different. So some people in your agency might gravitate towards the BD side. Some may love the candidate side. You probably have all done this internally. I loved the BD side, so naturally I wanted higher metrics. So I think, as you were saying there, Greg, don't impose a blanket version, but rather work on something together. So I think that will really resonate highly. Welcome everyone. My name is Casey, if I haven't introduced myself already, and I'm an account exec here at Job Adder for APAC X Sales Recruiter. Having used Job Adder in 2 different agencies, let's talk all about the KPIs. I love that Greg was giving me stick at the beginning around why are you talking about KPIs? Listen, I've had a love-hate relationship for the old KPIs over the years, so I think it's a great thing that we're discussing this now, this side of Christmas, to get you all ready and excited for next year. So I'm just going to start popping into what Job Adder is doing around this topic. So Job Adder, look, there's a lot of you on the call. Job Adder who use Job Adder. Job Adder is an Australian-owned company. We've been around for 10 years, backed by Seek, offices in Sydney, New Zealand, the UK, the US. We have over 4,000 customers globally. And this topic is one very dear to our hearts. A lot of you will know, and probably the first point of contact you have with some queries around our products to do with reporting, you probably have talked to someone on the support team. World-class support, 24/7. They're the salt of the earth, these people. They sit behind me in the Sydney office. There is no job too big for this team. 2 minutes average chat wait time, 20 minutes first email reply. You're not waiting for weeks on end with an automated bot giving you some information. We now have certification courses built into Job Adder as well, and especially around the reporting side. On that note, if you're a Job Adder user, you'll already know that there's 60 inbuilt reports on the ATS side, but you may not be using Power Adder, which is our deep dive analytics and reporting tool on Job Adder. So Job Adder, as Greg said, is all about the dashboards. It's giving you a snapshot of your business performance. This is a list of all the various reports that you can maintain on the Power Adder side. The big difference between your ATS 60 inbuilt reports on Job Adder, and please, if you haven't, go through them with a fine-tooth comb. The difference between them and the Power Adder one, you can schedule and automate more on the Power Adder side, and it's a much deeper dive. So let's see, what do I mean by that? For example, this is one of our first reports. On the right-hand side is a toggle button on the Power Adder reporting, and you can schedule these reports to be sent to you every morning at 6 a.m. or sent to someone else outside or inside the business every day to get a top-level view of your business health. On every single dash on the Power Adder side, we also have our filters button. You can drill down into team, date, placement, type, you name it. You can go into so much more detail. And of course, please put in a demo request and do it now. This side of Christmas, we can get all the demo requests done now. If you did want to get Power Adder set up, it has to be set up with you. So let's try and get this done this side of Christmas so you're starting off the new year on a high. Let's go into a few more of our fan favorite tabs here. through this side. So overview details. Look, a lot of you come to us and say, what about fill rate? I can't see that on the reports on the JAATS side. Okay, pop into the Power Adder side, go to Overview Details, which is your second tab. You'll see here, just as an example, I've done my filtering and press Run. I want to do the Sydney team. I can see the pipeline, how many jobs we have, our fill rate, most importantly, CV submit, total fee, etc. So it's a much deeper dive. It's only, of course, if the team are putting in the details correctly on the ATS side. As we know, it's easier said than done. One of the most recent changes we've made to the filters button is you can now do a report on contract extensions, which historically on Job Adder, you'd have to go digging. Whereas now on the Power Adder side, the contract extensions will come to you. How many hours have I spent doing contract extensions? And I'm sure a lot of you are laughing and screaming at your screen saying that is us 100 times. You'll spend ages. Now at least you can report on them. On this one, we have the consultants tab. So the consultant KPIs, again, a nicer drill down. Don't forget on the ATS side, you can do custom reports as well. If you want your list of your consultants, how many CVs they've sent, client visits, you name it, that column, you can build that grid as well on the ATS side. So a number of different ways to see the dashboards. Lost companies. This is one that I used to use so much in agency land. This is the best tab you've ever seen in your life. Genuinely, this is your BD list, okay? I'm going to see and follow my mouse here, all my clients, when they were last contacted by who, how many jobs we've had on with them, how many placements, our fill rate, and the dollar value we've made with them. This is the BD list. And then the most important part is here, when they were last contacted. I assure you, you would be amazed if you go into this tab on Power Adder and you say to me, I contact them every day. No, you don't. You probably think you do, but you don't. Go in here. This is your BD list. This was my BD list. I went in here every day and I saw where all my clients were, the most success I had with them, and time to go contacting them once again. I'm not going to go into all these tabs. Put in a demo request if you want to see more. One that's really exciting for us here is the efficiency tab. How many days does it take for John to get from A to D? It takes him 5 days to get from CV submit to first interview. What's going on there? These are things you can bring in to those one-to-ones that Greg mentioned, and stick to the one-to-ones as he mentioned as well, please. But this is a really good tab to see how long it takes us to get from A to D. Notice here I can do it from job side or from applications as well. Nearly finished here. Active contractors, on the note that Greg mentioned, chances are you've been a perm agency for so long. You've had the odd contractor come through this year and you go, hold on, hang on, this margin's keeping us afloat at times. And if you want to build this out in 2022, this is the tab that you go to see a list of all your contractors. As mentioned before, I see my contract extensions and I see my finishers. Not only that, if we drill down, it's not on this page here, but a bit further down, I can see the forecast and margin in finer detail. What will the contracting book bring me between December and 6 months from now, for example? So if you are looking to build out that contract side, have a look at that one. The final thing, I just want to let you all know, you can have these dashboards, as Greg mentioned, up in the office. I used to have these dashes up when I was an agency, and if you like that bit of competitiveness, I can see I'm second this week and Mary is ahead of me, and I'm going to try and get in there. So it does give that bit of competitiveness. You can add any of these dashboards onto your screen. The final thing I wanted to mention to you, we're doing up the UI currently of Power Adder as we speak. We're also incorporating diversity reporting. So for example, if you're agency A and you're versus agency B for the same client, if you don't do the stock standard, hi client, we've reached out to 500 people and 3 are coming in for an interview, I like the look of 2, we'll have CVs Friday. Whereas if you present, hi client, we've done all that, plus here's some diversity reporting as well. And those job applications and the diversity reporting, guess who's going to win the bulk of work there in agency land? It'll be you. So please, that's everything I wanted to say. Have a great Christmas. Please request a demonstration. Even if you spent an hour on doing this and talking to us this side of Christmas, getting ready for a successful 2022, especially after what Greg said, highly recommend you have a chat with us. And other than that, have a great break. It's I'm sure, like everyone else, we all are a bit burned out and a bit ready to go. But please, before you do take that break and put your out of office on, please have a think about these metrics and come talk to us and request a demo. And thanks for listening. So I'm going to pass you back to Karen now. And I think we have a million questions that have come through, if I'm not mistaken. So over to you, Karen and Greg.
Thanks, Casey. I'll get on to the questions in a moment. Can you just move to the next slide for me too, please?
There you go.
Casey, perfect. We've given away our 20 packs, but we've still got some of Greg's books to give away. So what we're going to do with those is everyone that attends today will get a certificate, which allows you to claim your RCSA CPD points. But if you can post that certificate onto LinkedIn and tag JobAdder, we'll contact you and send you a book, a copy of Greg's book. So all is not lost. You can still get your book, and failing that, you can always grab a copy from Greg's website. As Casey mentioned, when you're exiting today, there will be a survey popping up that'll ask you a couple of questions. One, it will allow us to gauge the effectiveness of today's session. We'll ask you to rate it, so please complete that. Let us know how you enjoyed it. The second option is asking you to give us some feedback on topics you'd like to learn more about, and that's really how we guide our content that we deliver to you, is by feedback from our webinar attendees. And the third one is, as Casey mentioned, requesting a demo. So if you're an existing client and you'd like to see Power Adder or another part of JobAdder, or if you're not using JobAdder and would like to see a full demonstration, please tick that box and we'll be sure to contact you and organise a demo. Now, we've only so far got 2 questions, so feel free to send through any more as we go through these first ones. This one is, what frequency would you check your consultants' KPIs? Greg.
Right. By the way, anyone on this webinar who'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do that. Just send an invite mentioning this seminar, and I will connect you. What frequency? Weekly is the answer. If I think the question is, how often do you check in, have a conversation about it? It's in that weekly one-on-one. That is absolutely, I mean, to me, it's the absolute sort of heart of a recruiter's success, and the heart of your ability as a manager or a leader to help that person succeed. So it's weekly because you want that person, if that meeting was on a Friday afternoon or a Monday, you want that person for that, doesn't matter what day it is, but you want that person for the next 5 days to have great clarity about what he or she is going to focus on that's going to lead to success. And every week might be slightly different. So if that was what the question meant, weekly. If it's a case of checking in against those ratios, like for example, what's the consultant fill rate? You know, they're filling, Greg, you said they're filling 1 out of 5. I'm sure I'm doing better than that. Well, it sounds to me that Casey says JobAdder will let you know that monthly, and you can check in on that on an ongoing basis. And you do need to have those assumptions that you're making up to date, but it's definitely a weekly check-in. A weekly one-on-one is the one meeting in recruitment I would never cancel.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Greg. I've got another one for you from Barry. Using your backwards planned method, do you think growth can be achieved by running a hybrid desk model, temp/perm combined?
Good question, Barry. If you are serious about building a contract business, you must have dedicated contract/temp consultants. That's it. Now, you might say to me, well, that's not true, Greg. I've got 5 recruiters doing both, and they've each got 6 contractors out, so I've got 30 contractors. It does work. If you had a dedicated person, you'd have 130 contractors. Not one, but if you had several. So I think it's extremely difficult. I think what happens is, if you ask someone to do temp and perm, they gravitate to perm because the reward is so high to get it right. So if I'm sitting there at my desk and it's like, oh, shall I do what Casey said and look at the dashboard and find contractors that I've lost contact with and start marketing them? Or shall I wazz a resume over to this perm client? I might bill it. It's 15 grand. They gravitate to that. So to grow a contract desk successfully, if you're serious about it, you need people who wake up every morning thinking temp and contract. And the issue comes when you try to work out backward plans for people and KPIs, when you're trying to do both, you're just trying to squash too much into something, and something gives, which is very, very difficult to do. Now, there are exceptions. Let's say you say we're in accounting recruitment and we're going to get into business support, and we're going to, we can only really afford to hire one person. You might say to that person, away you go doing both. But once you've got it to a certain level of momentum, we're going to split the desks and you can choose, but we're going to bring someone in to do the other thing. So that is my absolute belief. I believe it to be a truism. And actually in the book, I'm not really plugging the book, by the way, all the proceeds of this book go to charity. But I do like people to buy it though, because it took a lot of work and I think it can help. But in the book, I talk quite a lot about that thing. And I tell the story of how we built temporary solutions, which was 1,000 temps out at our peak. And it was dedicated recruiters who drove that and has done ever since. So I hope I answer your question, Barry. I think if you're trying to work backward plans and get people to do both, you're always watering it down. It's very difficult to do.
Okay, thanks for that. Our next one is from James. How would you manage the consequences if a consultant is failing to meet their metrics or KPIs?
Good question, James. So that's always the whip. We start with the whip, and then we go on to thumbscrews. I think I'm joking, of course. It is actually a very, very good question. And I think actually most of us in recruitment leadership are not very well equipped to deal with it. I think the first thing that you would do is you work with the recruiter to understand that if they're not hitting their KPIs, they should come and talk to you about it long before the next week's meeting. I'll give you an example. It's agreed in the KPI that the recruiter is going to set up, I'll make this up, five client meetings and interview 10 candidates, just for the hell of it. And they agree and they believe that's a good plan and it suits it's all agreed. You need to have worked with the recruiter to understand that if they're not hitting that, they should come back to you on Wednesday and say, Greg, I'm struggling. I'm not hitting these client meeting numbers because I took 8 jobs this morning and I'm focusing on that. And then you can say, spot on. I like that. Let's hold off the client. Let's just do the one. Let's do that one on Friday. But now let's quickly refocus and focus on filling those jobs. So it's the communication. It's not something hanging over somebody. Having said that, if somebody comes back and hasn't done the numbers, you don't berate them. You ask why, and that's many-layered. Why? I was busy. Yeah, I understand, Casey. I don't know anyone in recruitment who's not busy, but we agreed on Monday that that was going to be the number. What happened? Well, I took all these jobs, and that's fair enough. Come and tell me on Wednesday when that happens so we can recalibrate. So the consequences are explanation, recalibration, and the understanding that next time I agree with my manager about a KPI, I really should only agree something I intend to hit. And that way, even if the goals are lower, look, it's much better to have lower goals that we all hit. I'm not talking about disastrous, than these highfalutin. I mean, it really is silly. You see it all the time. Every week, goals are set. Every week, they're not hit. And every week, we continue on in the same way. It just takes all the value out of those meetings. No one believes them. It diminishes the leader's credibility. Much rather say, look, we said 5 client meetings. You're not hitting it. Why? Either allocate more time, or can I help you with the phone call, or let's make it 4, but make sure you hit 4 and let's put more time into something else. So I hope that helps you. I think it was James. It's constant communication, feedback loop, but really if the consultants agreed with them, they need to explain why, and these have a really, really good reason. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's a little awkward as they fumble around looking for a reason, but you'll tend to find that the next week they're going to hit the number.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, one more we've got from Richard. Would you run metrics, KPIs out of JobAdder or your accounting system? Could be a question for both. I know what Casey will say. JobAdder,
Very
of
good
course.
question. It's one we get. It's one we get a lot.
I mean, I'm a supporter of JobAdder. I believe they do. They provide a great tool, and it's getting better all the time. My generic answer, so I'll state my position up front, but my generic answer is it should come from your ATS, is where it should come from. And if your ATS can't help you with that, and they may not be able to provide everything, then you might want to look at what ATS you're using. It should come from your ATS, ATS, and your recruiter should be, remember, the recruiter's got to put the data in there. You know, if you have a conversation with a recruiter that says, look, mate, you only did 5 meetings, and they say, no, I did 8. I just didn't put it in. Well, then if it's not in, it didn't happen. Yeah, I know I'm saying this in a kind of rough and ready way, but that is really the truth. So you can't use a system like Job Adder unless the data is entered and people believe it's important to enter it, and then we work from that. So I would have said the ADS is the logical place. There are some things of those many metrics I spoke about that probably Job Adder or anyone can't do, and then you might have to, you know, like, I don't know, for example, on those metrics, not the KPIs, profit per recruiter, probably your ATS doesn't have that data. That'll have to come from your accounting system, but most of the others from the ATS. Would you agree, Casey?
Yeah, definitely. I would, of course. And I would say, look, this is where the joy of having a really great ATS in the front end, but also a really good integrated back office partner as well, can work really, really effectively together in tandem. So it should be coming, of course, from the ATS side. But again, it's the age-old question of, I put 10 jobs in the system. Oh no, you didn't actually. You put 20 jobs, and this kind of discrepancy that occurs because it is up to us at the end of the day to start putting the data in the first place. Absolutely, yeah. But the joy of having an integrated partner for the back office can't be underestimated, I would say. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Look, we're running out of time, everyone. We're going to do one last question for Greg because it's a doozy, and I'm sure you'll all be interested in his answer. And then any others that we've left over, we'll have to come back to, privately. So this one's from Louise. What do you expect within the recruitment market for 2022? Do you expect there to be an influx of people from overseas? Salaries are increasing heavily. What do you expect to see with this when people who don't expect that much come from overseas? So I guess, what are your predictions, Greg, for next year?
That doesn't appear to have much to do with KPIs, but I'm happy to talk about it. I think, now, obviously, as soon as you make predictions about the future, you're a fool. So I do it all the time, obviously. But assuming that we have this coronavirus thing contained and there's not some drastic fourth wave or whatever, and we're not back into lockdown, assuming some sort of semblance of normality, I expect 22 to be one of the best years for recruitment in a long time. I expect demand in terms of hiring to continue. I expect talent shortages to get worse, but that actually provides an opportunity for great recruiters who have access to candidates and know how to manage them. I expect labor mobility to be quite high. I believe this talk of the great resignation is somewhat over-exaggerated. I don't believe people change jobs frivolously. I don't believe a huge number of people are going to resign to get in a combi and travel around Australia. I do think people are looking very seriously at whether, I do think people are evaluating their lives and rethinking how they want to work, definitely. I do think people are evaluating their employer and judging their employer on how they behaved during COVID. I think they're looking at whether their employer's values match their own. I think there's plenty of people, I think it's true that if you stay in your current job, you might get a 1 or 2% salary increase, but if you move, you might get a 10 or 15% salary increase. I think that's going to drive mobility. So I think there will be, if not a great resignation, there will be high labor mobility. But that's a beautiful thing for us. We're the broker. We're the one who manages that. We should be dancing in the street with joy at that, and playing our role in making the right matches. So I think all that's fantastic, and I would encourage you all to stop talking about talent shortages as a problem and see it as an opportunity. In terms of your comment about overseas, I really don't know. I haven't even really kept up to date with, I've seen the Prime Minister say a few things, and I don't know whether people are going to rush back to this country in big numbers in the areas that we need them. I think, our backpack is going to come in big numbers and help us out on fruit picking and hospitality. Are IT people going to come into the business, into the country, I should say? I really don't know. And I also do think that, just remember that there might be some people who do come in, but there's going to be some who leave. There's plenty who have missed out on seeing their families in Europe and all that, and who might say, now's the time, I can leave, I can go back. So I don't know how that's going to, I honestly don't know. So I really shouldn't talk much about how that, I think open borders overall would just add to the fluidity of talent, so that will be good. But I think we're going to live with talent shortages for a long time, and we need to work on in this industry on our ability to, the irony about skill shortages is people think it's all about candidates. It's also how you manage your client. There's plenty of clients coming to recruitment companies and saying, our policy is we're going to have people back in the office 5 days a week, and recruiters are writing it down and trying to find people. Why don't we just tell the client, if you have that rule, you're not going to get the best talent? As an example, salaries, flexibility, corporate ethos, employer value proposition, these are all things that will play a part. But I think it'll be great for recruitment. I think it's very perm orientated at the moment. I think contract will bounce back and grow. I think we're going to struggle with the shortage of recruiters because of that great decimation of recruiters that happened. I think it plays into a big challenge around, you did ask, by the way, Angela or Louise, so I'm telling you, I think it plays into, I went into a recruitment company the other day. It's a company that, this is my third meeting online today, so I'm not sure if I've told the story, so forgive, I don't think I have. I went into a recruitment company the other day, and the office holds about 25 people. There were 7 people there. The company hasn't stipulated people have to come back. They've said, hey, until Christmas, come back if you wish. One of those people was the managing director, and the other 6 had less than 3 months experience, sitting in this giant office. Think about that. How are those people going to make it? I looked over one girl's shoulder, and she was being trained by her manager who was at home. No one to learn from, no buzz, no osmosis learning. They were giving them training, but there were 6 rookies and the MD. And I think that is a great example of a challenge that we're all going to face. People are very simplistic about saying work from home has worked. I think the jury's still out. I think there's a long way to go. It's clear we're going to need a much more blended, and people will work from home, and that's a good thing in many ways. Remote working is excellent. It's opened up talent and given people more options, and it's improved people's lives. But the flip side of it is true that a lot of people are going to struggle. How do you learn how to be a recruiter from home in your first 6 months? It's extremely difficult. How do you create the ethos and the energy? How do you implement these things without sitting in a room with a person and hearing them make the calls and giving them the feedback? So I think that's a challenge. Hiring, we need a new generation of recruiters to be hired. A recruitment company is going to have to do it because there's no experienced people, very few to be had. But how do we make sure that we don't get an 80% failure rate? That's my worry. A whole generation needs to be created in recruitment, and it'll be a beautiful thing. It'll add fresh blood, the right sorts of energy, but we have to give them the support to succeed. And it's training, it's onboarding, it's the support, because we all know how difficult it is to go from rookie to surviving in this business. So there you are. Quite a few things I touched on. I hope I answered what you were asking.
Thanks for that, Greg. So I think we'll leave it here now. We're almost at the hour and a half, I should say. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Greg for putting together that immense presentation that was full of information that I know a lot of you, we've had some really good feedback, have got a lot from. And thank you, Casey, for telling us all about our Power Adder tool. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.